Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto found himself in a modern harem with Hinata, Temari, Ino, and more part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please give me hype instead of comment and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Itachi snorted beside Hinata. Sasuke frowned and glared at his older brother. Hinata didn't even look up from her glass of champagne. And I still believe you, Sasuke. Really. Just let it go. Itachi cleared his throat and blew a stream of curly smoke from his nostrils into his cup of champagne. Ms. Hinata, I believe that the person who invites you must have full knowledge of this party's requirements before dragging you along. Sasuke grinded his teeth at Itachi's remark. How did he even get invited? Sasuke studied Hinata, his dark chocolate eyes lighting with warmth. Her eyes were fastened on the wispy smoke that are circulating on top of Itachi's drink, swirling around gently. Itachi noticed her fascination, lifted his head and winked at Sasuke. Sasuke lowered his eyebrows. Itachi smirked. Don't worry, she's not my type, he mouthed. He blew the curling smoke away and took a sip from his champagne. Hinata turned to grin at Sasuke. I can't believe you're being so calm about this. If I were you, I'd be dumping that glass of champagne all over me, Sasuke countered. There must be 500 people out there. And they're all staring at you. But that's no big deal. Hinata's eyes glinted. Well, it's not your fault I decided to wear red. And it's not your fault that you didn't remember that the Haruno ball is also called black and white ball because everybody wears black and white, Sasuke said, shaking his head. Why didn't anybody tell me? Sasuke looked pointedly at Itachi. His older brother shrugged. I think it was on the invitation that you didn't really read, Hinata suggested. Okay, so maybe it was your fault a little. And it is definitely your fault that I'm sitting under a spotlight at the head table, but Sasuke groaned and put his head down on his hands. Itachi smoked. Hinata laughed. Okay. Feel guilty. You deserve it. I owe you for this one, Hinata. Hinata chided him. Sasuke, after what I've been through this week, this is nothing. When Hinata had walked in with Sasuke, she had seen a sea of stark, unbroken black and white. She froze. 500 pairs of eyes had snapped on her, staring as if she'd just emerged from a spaceship. It was strangely reminiscent of her old nightmare of showing up late for a big class design review in her ratty old underwear. Her initial reaction had been to turn, run back out the doors, steal Sasuke's keys from the valet and make an escape. But she hadn't. Instead, she kept her chin up, her eyes wide and her smile bright. Even if she had a blush that matched her deep red dress, she wouldn't let them see otherwise how humiliating the experience was. Surprisingly, Neji and Kankuro were among the guests. She caught them staring at her as well, but with different reactions. She saw Neji said something to Kankuro and she could deftly make out the words by lip reading. Look how beautiful my cousin's sister has turned out to be. Hinata's chest swelled with pride. She also saw Kankuro's hand snuck out a thumbs up gesture while he sneakily roved his hand over his freshly colored hair. She wasn't going to die of embarrassment. In fact, she wasn't even going to see most of these people again even if they stared at her with a look of amusement, or worse, contempt. She looked pretty good in her sexy apparel, a sassy ruby red evening dress with wide waist tie and pleated ruffled skirt for flair. The fact was, Hinata loved the dress. It was the first time in her life she could actually say that. She'd put up with the pastel confections that Deidara, her ex-boyfriend, had created, add the similarly frail summer dresses that Temari had fobbed off on her. But this particular ready-made had practically yelled, Hinata. When she stepped into the store, she turned down all the peaches and pale pinks that Temari had suggested, and when she tried her dress on, even Temari and the saleswoman had to admit it was fantastically fabulous. It fit her like a glove and she felt like a queen in it. She looked pretty darn good. So if everybody else was wearing black and white, so what? She'd been caked in mud in front of the most eligible bachelor in America. She'd practically smeared whipped cream all over herself in a public restaurant. She was the cherry babe on the website, and she had made grown men weep at a nearby sports bar. Compared to all that, wearing red in front of a bunch of socialites was a cakewalk. The funny thing was, she really needed to thank Naruto for his part in our new confidence, even if he didn't realize that he had helped her. If he hadn't pushed her, she would never realized how much she could take, or how much she could give. She wasn't sure how it happened, but somehow a lot of things she used to view as terrifying were suddenly trivial. The people she really cared about thought she was fine. More than that, they thought she was beautiful. Her eyes fell onto her cousin, Neji, in a black ribbon and lace evening gown. This cutting-edge design featured 3 layers of flounced ruffles and a meshed bodice with a ribbon and lace overlay with thin black straps. Coupled up with his tumbling wavy locks and the bust size, Neji looked way too pretty for a female. Hinata's mouth dropped open, stunned. Neji wagged a finger at her and pushed her chin up with her fingers, looking directly at Hinata while dancing with the auburn-haired Kankuro. They looked like patrons that has always been in league with the elites. Although, come to think of it, Neji is a model and Kankuro a makeup artist. Hinata, remembering her spotlight, closed her dainty mouth laced with Maybelline's natural sparkle. She had to admit, Neji looked beautiful with lovely grace and polished features. Speaking of beautiful, she was pretty sure Naruto thought she was cute, at least. Hinata sipped her champagne slowly. She frowned, remembering the strange moment in his office. He'd leaned so close she could practically feel currents of energy running off him. For a brief, crazed moment, she thought he might have kissed her. Not that that was what she wanted. She'd known for years that Naruto was handsome. The sun-kissed rocker locks, smooth tanned skin, and how is it even possible to have such blue eyes? If anything, he was too handsome. Men like that were never interested in women like her, so it hadn't occurred to her to see him as anything but a friend. But for a brief moment, hadn't she hoped? No. Hinata shook her head to banish the thought. A catty voice sounded, "My, that's quite a dress." Maintaining her cool, Hinata replied, "Thanks. I love it." She tilted her chin towards the woman and her partner. "The way I see it, red stands out so much better against black and white, don't you think?" She said easily. "I certainly think so." The women's date agreed instantly without even considering the feelings of his partner. "Oops. Sorry." A sultry feminine voice cried as red wine was split onto the dude's tux. The woman who split the drink tripped into the blonde man's arms. "Oh, no, I'm supposed to be the one apologizing, love," he said it with such rehearsed ease, that Hinata couldn't help but gagged on the inside. Although somehow, the man seemed awfully familiar. "Deidara, how could you?" The catty woman gasped in shock before storming off, leaving Neji dragging Deidara away, although it seemed as though Neji already had him on a leash. Hinata silently thanked Neji. She whipped her head around and looked at Sasuke, who was goggling at her. Who are you, and what have you done with Hyuga Hinata?" She chuckled. "I know. It's like the invasion of the pod people, only this time with a sense of humor." Sasuke shook his head. "You amaze me, Hinata. You don't seem like the girl I had dinner with the other night at all." Hinata sobered slightly, considering his words. "Is that a bad thing?" "No," he said quickly. "It's just, well, it's like somebody found your volume control and turned it all the way up." Hinata shot him a skeptical glance. "And that's supposed to make me feel better?" Sasuke grinned and gently stroked his fingertip along her jawline. "It is, when you have been whispering for years, beautiful." Hinata smiled again. If this kept up, her cheek muscles were going to be cramping. But she couldn't help herself. "I need to mingle. There are some big fundraisers here tonight," Sasuke said, staring off at the crowd of immaculate dressers. "Want to come with me?" She shook her head. "I thought I'll people watch a bit, maybe sit out on the sidelines." "Okay. Gorgeous," Sasuke said. "Give me half an hour and I'll take you home." Hinata nodded soundlessly. Sasuke gave her a quick peck on the cheek, then headed out toward the milling guests. They clumped around him like iron fillings on a magnet. He disappeared into the crowd. Sasuke was a nice guy, incredibly good looking as well. Hinata sighed as her train of thoughts began to trace the smart dark clothes he had worn. Even though Sasuke said he hadn't read the invitation clearly, he had abided to the dress code. Black must be a standard color for guys. Sasuke will one day inherit the family's shipping business, he's putting up a good front. He already has an excellent reputation in the world's society. No point ruining that, Itachi said as he noticed the faraway look Hinata had. Oh, I wasn't. You're dating one rich kid. I'm not dating him because he's rich. I didn't say you are. I'm just informing you, just to let you know what to expect on the outcome of this relationship, Itachi hummed on his cigarette. Oh, I'm managing and operating another side business of the Uchihas, and you may not ask what it is about. Hinata huffed. Then why tell her? Got her curiosity going for nothing. A beautiful raven-haired woman stopped her, looking her over. Hinata immediately recognized her from the Foreign Telegram and National Trust. She also appeared on several mini-TV shows and talk shows, even comedy series. She also worked alongside Children with Learning Disabilities organization and had donated 1/4 of her salary for charity every time she was paid. Her most recent comedy series was Slice to Decorate Soup, and she looked so different in there than the woman in front of me in that stunning halter top gown. Great dress, Yuahi Kurenai said. Hinata blinked. Her tone was genuine, with none of the sarcasm or venom of the woman Hinata had spoken with earlier. Thanks, Hinata said, smiling. I have to admit though, I didn't know about the black and white dress code thing. Really? Kurenai flashed her a brilliant smile, and her voice warm. Hinata was momentarily blinded. I was sitting at my table envying the hell out of you, ready to rip into my agent for not thinking of trying a red dress last year. You're getting a great buzz tonight, so I figured you must be an actress. No, Hinata hastily explained. I'm a designer. That explains it, the lead actress for Celestial Maidens said, snapping her fingers. It's written all over you. Have I seen your fall collection? It took Hinata a minute to figure out what she was asking. Then, she quickly shook her head. Oh, no, I'm not that kind of designer. I'm a graphic designer. I haven't done fashion stuff in years. You might want to rethink that. That dress suits you perfectly, it's simple yet smashing. Sort of Grace Kelly does Versace. Hinata glanced down at her dress, grinning foolishly. You know, I was thinking more Audrey Hepburn does Vera Wang. Better. Kurenai reached inside her black crocodile leather purse and handed Hinata a card. That does it. If you're up for it, I'd love to have you work with me on my dress for the Oscars next year. I'm always looking for a killer stylist. I have a good feeling about you. A stylist? Her. Sure. I mean, I'll think about it. Hinata mentally slapped herself for fumbling with her answer. But she doesn't even have the permit or credentials. She don't want to disappoint her favorite star. The Raven Beauty smiled again, this time, a rosier one before moving back into the crowd. Hinata saw Orochimaru latching a possessive arm around her waist, his slender fingers stroked Kurenai's bum gently. Hinata then noticed that Kurenai leaned slightly into Orochimaru whilst talking to his new friend. Admittedly, Kurenai's love life was very interesting. Firstly with Asuma, then a brief fling with Kabuto, now Orochimaru. Okay, now this would be the part where I wake up. But Hinata didn't wake up. She was still standing there, in her deep red dress, holding the business card of one of the most successful actresses in Hollywood. She felt like singing. She was queen of the world. She was. Oh, if only her cousin, friends, and the gang could see her now. HHMPH. That rat doesn't deserve to be with Kurenai. That sneaky bastard, a new voice sounded behind her. Hinata turned around quickly. What shocked her was another handsome male presence. Are there no short of beautiful people here? Don't mind my young uncle, Ms. Hinata, Itachi said, discarding the remains of his cigarette on the floor. He obviously has an infatuation on Kurenai-san. Infatuation? My. If I find out she's in cohorts with Orochimaru on Asuma's death. Kakashi clenched his fist. Kakashi. Itachi gripped his shoulder. Don't you dare hurt Kurenai because of your theory. Kakashi was soon quiet, but then said, I won't, but I would try everything in my power to get to the bottom of this, even if it means seducing Kurenai. Be careful, Itachi. Your subtlety towards her is wearing off. Soon, you have to make up your mind. Kakashi shrugged Itachi's hand off his shoulder and walked towards the pair, Kurenai and Orochimaru. Itachi froze and Hinata gaped. Oh, yeah, Itachi rolled up his sleeves. He's not beating me to her. He walked a few long strides before sidestepping from his supposed destination, taking out another cigarette and walking out of the ballroom to smoke. Hinata shook her head for the second time tonight. She wished the gang were here now. They'll definitely stir things up. She heard the steady rumbling of conversation slow, then grind to a halt. Curious, she looked toward the doorway. Speak of the devil. The gang were framed in the large doorway, standing resplendent. Naruto, Kiba, Gaara and Iruka posed like GQ sentinels, completely indifferent to the stir they were creating. It was strange enough to see her poker crew at a Haruno party, much less their black and white ball. But, as Hinata glanced at their formal attire, she noticed something was missing. Namely, their pants. They were all wearing pressed white shirts and shiny black tuxedo jackets. But from the waist down, they wore long, loose-fitting surfer shorts in every color under the sun, paired with black suede high-topped sneakers. Both the shorts and the sneakers displayed a large logo, the distinctive shark with sunglasses that Hinata herself had designed for Naruto's sportswear company. In unison, the guys removed their black Wayfarer sunglasses, tucking them away in their inner coat pockets. They walked down the steps, looking every inch like models on catwalk as flashbulbs exploded. Guests let out a tentative chuckle and a smattering of applause. Hinata made her way to the throng to where they were standing. She loved them for showing up. She just loved them, period. Naruto. She ran up to him and gave him a huge, exuberant hug. There you are, Sonny. He smiled as she distributed enthusiastic hugs to the rest of the crew. I was just about to send the guys on a search and rescue for you. You could have just stood here on the steps. I'm sure I would have noticed sooner or later. Hinata's hair bubbled as she flashed them a toothy smile. Naruto noticed Hinata had her fringes and the hair ends curled. No doubt for the occasion. Hinata looked at Naruto, Kiba, Gaara and Iruka, laughter fighting with admiration. Laughter won. Great gams, gang. What do you think? Kiba struck a Vogue-like pose. I'm too sexy for my shorts. You guys are too sexy for this party, Hinata agreed. What are you doing here? The gang didn't say anything but stared pointedly at Naruto. Naruto cleared his throat. Well, we discussed it last night, and we thought you might need a little more coaching. She raised an eyebrow. Oh, really? Well, we were a little concerned. Naruto looked slightly red, a fact that caused giggles to bubble through Hinata. She'd never thought she'd see the day that Naruto was embarrassed. I kept thinking about how you said you felt uncomfortable, and how this was going to be awful, and I thought, well, you know. She took pity on him. You guys were trying to help, weren't you? They nodded sheepishly. Then, devilish grins broke out. So, how are we doing, darling? Iruka finally said. Hinata couldn't help it. She burst out in laughter. It was one of the sweetest, silliest things she'd ever seen. When she finally recovered, she said, wow. I'm really thankful. You guys are wonderful. Insane, but wonderful. And you, Cupcake, are stunning, Gaara said, bending over her hand for a courtier-style kiss. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed Naruto frowning at the action. So, do you think you'll give me a dance tonight, or are you going to blow me off? Dance, Hinata said. She glanced out at the ballroom floor. Couples were doing a slow sway to an elevator music version of some popular song. Hinata frowned. I don't know. We'll handle that, Naruto said. Kiba. Kiba grinned broadly. On my way. She watched Kiba dart over to the leader of the orchestra. He said his request, then shook the man's hand. Hinata didn't even want to think how much money Kiba was bribing him with. The song the band was playing limped to a close. Then, after a few moments of silence, the brass section positively exploded into a lively rendition of Louie, Louie. The tuxedo and evening gown clad group were stunned yet again. The gang, however, were in their element. Hinata didn't know whether to hide or simply laugh at the sidelines as four grown men got out there and shook their stuff. Naruto smiled, taunting her. Chicken, chicken. Tonight, she could walk on fire. The man had no idea. Try and keep up with me, Hinata shot back. With that, Hinata stepped out on the floor and did a vivacious solo Latino dance number, throwing in a couple of fast tap dancing in motion. She definitely showed them exactly how it was done. To her utmost surprise, the faces of the crowd were no longer filled with condescension or disdain. They now seemed to be enjoying the spectacle that was livening up what was obviously a traditionally dull party. She noticed several younger couples moving out on the floor and dancing with them. The gang were a sensation. Naruto grabbed her waist and they improvised from there. Hinata was having so much fun. The song wound down with a flourish, and Naruto dipped her on the final note. The crowd erupted into applause. There was no laughter, no mocking, just sheer delight. Naruto picked her up from the dip, ignoring the response of the rest of the audience. I don't believe it. His smile seemed to be for her alone. You're incredible, Angel. He had an arm lightly resting around her waist. She was still giddy and breathless from dancing. At least, she thought it was from dancing. Hinata placed a hand on his chest and could feel his heart pulsing under her hand through his white shirt. His blue eyes shone like beacons. Of course, something or someone had to interrupt this moment. Haruno Sakura stormed over, her face knit in an expression of fury. Who are you people? Naruto and Hinata jumped away from each other. Hinata swallowed hard. Ms. Haruno. Gaara, Kiba and Iruka stood in a united front by Naruto. Naruto cleared his throat. We're the gang, he said simply, as if that explained everything. He could have said the Boy Scouts and that wouldn't have meant a thing. Sakura's eyes widened so far that Hinata was certain they'd pop right out of their sockets. The Who? No, the Who is a rock band out of England, Kiba corrected her, tongue in cheek. We're a surf crew out of Manhattan Beach. A surf crew. If it was even possible, Sakura's eyes widened even farther. I don't believe this. I'll give you exactly 1 minute to get. Naruto. It's great you could make it. Sasuke's smooth baritone floated over as he made his way across the dance floor. He shook Naruto's hand. Hinata stifled a laugh at Sakura's new look of shock. The woman obviously fawned on Uchiha Sasuke, proud of his presence at her society function. Now, she'd been insulting what looked like his best friend. Sasuke, Naruto said, grinning. I just thought that this place could use a little livening up. Good thinking, Sasuke said with a laugh, putting a casual arm around Hinata's shoulders. He smiled down at her. You looked incredible out there. I didn't know you could dance like that. Hinata blushed. Another one of my party tricks, she said. The crew grinned at her. Haruno Sakura remained speechless. Hope you don't mind me dancing with your girl, Naruto said in an oddly neutral tone. I don't mind who she dances with, Sasuke said with an annoying smile. After all, I'm the one who's taking her home. He gave Hinata a quick squeeze. Which we can do now, by the way. Sakura, it's been a lovely party. Best one in ages, thanks to these guys. Ah, thank you, Sasuke. Sakura clearly looked dazed. Take care of my friends, will you? I promised this lovely lady I'd have her home early. Sasuke gazed down at Hinata. Ready? She looked at the gang. All the guys except Naruto were smiling broadly in approval. Naruto just looked off in the distance, a bored expression on his face. Well, what was she expecting? A pleading look, begging her not to go. Hinata looked up into Sasuke's smiling eyes. The most eligible bachelor in America wanted to take her home. And tonight, she was capable of anything. Home it is, she said, looping her arm through his. I'll talk to you later, guys. They whistled at her, making her exit with Sasuke a very public spectacle. Flashes went off, people applauded. Hinata resisted sneaking a peek back at the guys as she and Sasuke finally walked out the door. Half an hour later, she was still riding the emotional crest that had hit her at the Haruno ball when Sasuke dropped her off at her house. I don't know how to thank you, Sasuke, Hinata murmured thoughtfully. Sasuke smiled charmingly at her. For what? You did me a favor, remember? He nudged her gently. I've got to say, it's been a long time since I've had a date that lively. He grinned. Hinata shook her head. You don't understand. How could he? For the first time in her life, Hinata felt beautiful. She didn't care what other people thought or said. She felt like a full-blooded woman. How could a man understand that a woman never forgot the first time she felt like that? All I know is, you were beautiful out there tonight. Yao era sensation. He surveyed her for a moment, silent. So, here we are again. And it's not the first date. Sasuke waited expectantly. Hinata's post-party euphoria fled in a tiny burst of panic. Knew what she going to do. Wait a minute. She'd been a goddess tonight. She was beautiful, confident, and capable of anything. Why shouldn't she try to see if Mr. Right was Sasuke, after all? Hinata took a deep breath and closed her eyes. After a second, Sasuke brushed his lips over hers. Hinata waited, and felt nothing. When it stopped, she opened her eyes. So, that's it, huh? She asked seriously. Sasuke raised his eyebrow and laughed. If you've got to ask, then I'm not doing it right. He dipped his face down to hers again and swooped her whole body low to the ground. Hinata momentarily saw bright lights above Sasuke as blood rushed ferociously to her brain. This time, the kiss was more insistent with Sasuke sucking on her bottom lip. Sure, Hinata felt dazed, but it's because of the sudden change in positioning. Still, the kiss to Hinata was more friendly than passionate. All right, this just wasn't fair. She was being kissed by a Prince Charming who was available and apparently interested. And her heart rate barely rose, except for when he swooped her downward. Sasuke pulled away, then studied her face. Hinata tried to crack a smile, but it came out as a grimace. I'm feeling dizzy. It's been a long night, she quickly added. And an eventful one. Sasuke shrugged and uprighted himself in Hinata. He gave her a lopsided grin that warmed her heart. All right, pretty girl, I'm off. I'll call you this week if you want to do something. Okay. Did she want to see him this week? She had fun with him, but this was getting a little weird. She waved to him as he turned and walked to the gate. Hinata walked up to her front door pensively. She didn't know what happened, and that was part of the problem. She didn't really have a lot of experience with men in the physical arena, BTU she was pretty sure that what had just happened wasn't a good indicator. Good grief. Dead car batteries had more spark than they'd managed to generate. Hinata was just shutting the door behind her when she heard a rush of footsteps on the walkway. Praying it wasn't Sasuke again, she cautiously opened the door a crack. Naruto gave her a breathless smile that gleamed in the moonlight. Good, he huffed. You're still up. What are you doing here? Hinata asked, bewildered. He paused for a moment, a blank look on his face. Would you believe I'm here to pick up the jacket I loaned you yesterday? Hinata quirked an eyebrow at him. If it's the best you could come up with, then that's what I'm here for. Come on in then, she said, opening the door for him. I could use somebody to talk to. Naruto walked in and sat down, groaning with relief. He surveyed her from head to toe, and sent her a warm but tired smile. That's a pretty cool dress. Hinata felt a little pulse of warmth shoot through her. Thanks. I like it. You knocked him dead tonight. And I have you and the gang to thank for it, she said in giggles as she remembered the look on Haruno Sakura's face. So, did you decide you'd just had enough of the party, or did Sakura go ahead and kick you out? I'd had enough. The guys are still there, Naruto added, grinning. And Sakura tried to hire us as entertainment for her Christmas gala. He laughed, tucking his tie into his jacket pocket as he undid the top button of his shirt. He took a deep breath. God, I hate ties. I have no sympathy for you, Hinata scoffed, reaching awkwardly for the zipper on the back of her dress. After the disappointing episode with Sasuke, she could feel the energy of the evening sap out of her. This whole outfit is like a tie from your neck to your knees, buddy. Not to mention the contraption I have to wear underneath. I feel like I need a team of scientists to get it on and off. Looks good, though. Hinata wriggled uncomfortably, her sudden weariness making her fingers fumble. Do me a favor and unzip me, will you? She turned in front of him and waited. She thought for a moment that he must have fallen asleep on the couch. It seemed to take him forever to get up. Finally, he stood behind her. His breath warmed her nape, and she felt an odd shiver in her stomach. How'd you get into this? He muttered, struggling with the zipper. Temari helped. She's got a degree in this sort of thing, Hinata whispered, then stopped on a quick exhalation. Naruto slowly unzipped the length of her dress. Hinata was sure that the way the tip of his thumb brushed down the smooth skin between her shoulder blades were purely accidental. Still, Hinata felt her heart pulse, then double in speed, heat curling through her. That better. Naruto leaned over her shoulder, studying her face for a second. Hinata gulped and nodded quickly. Need help with anything else? She glanced over her shoulder and saw his gaze riveted to the back of her hooked bustier. No. She bit her lip, confused by the sudden rush of blood racing through her. I can manage from here. Hinata bolted to her bedroom before Naruto could sense that rapid change that occurred in her breathing, in her body. There was no way he could have realized that her neck and back were two of the most sensitive spots on her body. They were erogenous zones in their own right, something that always embarrassed her. Naruto certainly hadn't done it on purpose. She was confused enough right now. This is no time to indulge in some strange, adolescent crush on her best friend. She quickly and awkwardly shed her clothes, dumping them in the dry cleaning hamper. Hinata threw on a large t-shirt and flannel boxers, taking a deep breath before wandering back out. So, what did you want to talk about? Naruto asked. He'd grabbed a glass of water and was comfortably settling in. She sighed, flopping down next to him on the couch. I'm confused, Naruto. Confused about what, Sonny? Hinata put her head back, staring at her white ceiling. It was a lot simpler before this whole bet thing got started. I really thought I was happy with my life. I know that one, Naruto said, groaning. The next time I suggest something that dumb, just haul me out and hit me once. Well, it hasn't been all bad, she said, stretching a little. He put his arm along the back of the couch, and she rested her head on his bicep. I mean, for probably the first time in my life, I felt pretty, Naruto. You have no idea what that's like. I have a long way to go, but it was nice. You looked great, Hinata. Naruto's voice was deep and sincere. But then, I kissed Sasuke. Hinata sighed. Now, I just wish I was still watching Super Bowl with the gang, and wearing my baggy sweatshirts and jeans, and not worrying about finding Mr. Right because I know there's never going to be one. Naruto stayed silent. But it's too late now, Hinata mused thoughtfully. It's like I've opened Pandora's box. I don't want to live like I used to, but I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I feel pretty tonight, but I don't want to keep being what somebody tells me to look like. Deidara tried to change me into something I wasn't. Hinata remembered how clueless Deidara was to her identity at the ball, and was secretly thankful of that. Naruto still didn't say anything. Finally, she looked over at him. Are you asleep? He was very still, but his cerulean eyes were wide open and piercing. You kissed Sasuke. Hinata rolled her eyes. Yeah, it wasn't a big deal. Let's just say it was a chemistry experiment. His eyes bore into her. He was quiet for a moment, and then nodded, as if he'd decided something. Are you seeing him tomorrow? No, She answered, puzzled. Why, Sonny? I'm barely seeing you once a week. I feel like you've moved to Tahiti or something. He ran his fingers distractedly through his blonde hair. I hate to admit it, but I miss you. Hinata swallowed the lump forming in her throat. She smiled and moved her head to rest on his shoulder. Like a reflex, he curved his arm around her. He continued, so I figured, if I have to start scheduling dates with my best friend, then that's what I'll do. Whatever it takes to keep our friendship, Sonny. Hinata sent him a sleepy giggle. A date with Naruto, she mused, lulled by his warmth. Naruto rested his chin on top of her head, and she chuckled. Hell has frozen over. She felt his laughter reverberate through his chest, beneath her cheek. Hinata sleepily realized she was happy. She wanted to stay like this all night, this warmth curling through her, the deep sound of his breathing beneath her, her arms around him. So, invite him to spend the night. Wait a minute, what was that? Hinata immediately shot up, wide awake, and got to her feet pronto. She was too tired if she could come up with an idea that preposterous. I'm falling asleep here, Naruto, she said quickly. Consider it a date. What do you want to do? Naruto smiled and stood next to her. How could she feel waves of heat coming off the man? She took a prudent step towards the door, but he followed her. There's a Raider game at 11, which should give you plenty of time to sleep, he said, winking at her. After that, I don't know. Maybe a video or something. Now this was more familiar. Do I get to pick the movie, she teased, or is it going to be another testosterone fest where we watch 2 lines of grunting dialogue and 2 hours of explosion? Naruto belted out a ringing laugh. Fine. Be a girl. You can pick the movie, and I'll spring for dinner. Lentil curries, chicken and kebabs, okay. You know it's my favorite. He rubbed the top of her head with his hand, rumpling her hair. Groping, of course, is optional. I know you can't keep your hands off of me. Hinata elbowed him in the ribs, gratified by the oof he let out. Get out of here, you bum, she said, trying not to laugh. This was more normal. Grateful at him for caring, Hinata leaned up to kiss Naruto, a quick, typical peck on the cheek. He must have had the same intention, since he was already leaning down toward her face. She just turned a little too fast. His lips connected to hers like metal to lodestone, unerring a magnetic connection. Her eyes widened to see his eyes widen too, with just as much surprise. Then, his eyes closed, and she was lost. It couldn't have lasted more than a few seconds, but she felt his mouth move, his lips parted fractionally. Every nerve ending she had seemed to tingle to life. Hinata didn't mean to, but she felt her body lean forward, her head tilt back. It was electric. He must have felt the current jolt in him, because he jerked back, as if shocked from a socket. He blinked twice, then shrugged. Good night, Sonny. Good night. Hinata hurriedly closed the door behind him, locking the deadbolt. She peered through the peephole at his dark silhouette, strolling down her walkway. Then, on shaky legs, she went over to the kitchen and poured herself a tall glass of ice-cold water. Okay. If that wasn't irony, she didn't know what was. Legions of hormones had suddenly snapped to attention with one little, insignificant, accidental kiss. With Naruto, no less. How was that for dumb luck? In theory, Sasuke was perfect, Naruto was pointless. Too bad her body thought otherwise. You have to go what works for you, not what people tell you to like. Suddenly, she blinked. That's it. The advice rolled in her head like thunder. When Hinata was younger, she'd been hesitant to go into fashion designing, thinking it too girly, and obviously out of her realm. So, she'd let other people make those design decisions for her, and she'd ended up with stuff other people had told her to like. Hinata had never trusted her own instincts, until the dress tonight. The dress made her feel spectacular. Hinata rushed to her design studio, tearing out a huge sketchpad and breaking into her carefully organized tackle box filled with colored pens. She never felt comfortable in pastels, and she didn't like all those fragile, baby doll designs. If she stuck with what she wanted, what could she come up with? She tore into the paper, drawing hurriedly, all thought of Naruto, Sasuke, Kurenai, the gang, and the girls gone. It was brilliant, Hinata thought. And it was going to work. Ooh. Naruto was vacuuming his house at 10 o'clock Sunday morning. That was a strange enough event. Ordinarily, he believed that Sunday mornings were meant for one thing, and one thing only, to sleep in, waking only to take in food or catch a football game. But his eyes had popped open at around 6 in the morning, and he could not get back to sleep. Friend or not, he had a date with Hinata. Not that it was a real date. He'd been very cautious about that, he assured himself, vacuuming around his coffee table. It was all part of a carefully laid out plan. She'd come over, they'd indulge in all their favorite activities, and it would occur to her that she enjoyed her life just the way it used to be. She would remember how happy she was before she changed her look, before she met Sasuke, before Naruto had opened his big fat mouth and very nearly ruined his perfect life. Then, she'd give up man-hunting for good, get back into her old clothes, and things would be just as they used to be. Naruto sighed, shutting off the vacuum and grabbing a dust rag. If they could ever be just the way they used to be. Last night had scared the hell out of him. He'd just about swallowed his tongue when he saw her standing there, a vision in red satin. She'd looked seductive and exotic, and he'd felt an involuntary tug of desire shoot through him before he reminded himself yet again of whom exactly she was. He'd had to repeat that little reminder over and over for the rest of the night. When he saw her walking off with Sasuke, he'd been ready to strangle someone. He'd left immediately after, and gotten to her house with the misguided thought of protecting her. If Sasuke were half as hormonal-driven as the average man, he'd tried anything possible to get Hinata into bed. Naruto knew that he sure would have. If I were Sasuke, that is, Naruto quickly amended that phrase. He nervously dusted off his bookcase. He was relieved when Sasuke wasn't in Hinata's house last night, but his relief turned to alarm when she asked him to unzip her, revealing all that smooth, creamy skin, and that sexy black bustier. He'd had to get himself a glass of water when she'd been in the other room. He'd almost fled then and there, but by then he'd come up with this crazy date plan. At this point, he'd be willing to dress in drag if he thought it might get things back the way they used to be. He put away the vacuum cleaner and got out paper towels and glass cleaner, heading for his balcony doors. The problem was, as good an idea as this was, he wasn't sure if he could go through with it. His body was starting to boss around his mind, and his conscience, well frankly, his conscience was always about 2 minutes too late to be really useful. He wanted Hinata. That kiss had come out of the blue, just when he had gotten comfortable. It had sucker punched him, and he couldn't flee the house quickly enough. He had thought maybe Hinata had looked dazed, but he hadn't stayed still long enough to really tell. He'd never really considered her as dating material before. When they'd been younger, she was always that quiet girl who's itching to let loose. When he'd come back from college, she was still grieving over that guy, and he'd felt absurdly protective. He was also still raising hell, and instinctively knew that Hinata wasn't that type of woman. She had become his best friend because he could talk to her about things that were too deep to share with the boys, too painful to discuss with his family, e.g. Konkuro's sudden announcement about going public with Neji, etc. When his relationships had gone south, she was the first person he called. When he'd been given a branch from his father's larger organization to manage on sportswear company, she was there with a bouquet of cookies on lollipop sticks, of all things. She was the closest person to him on the face of the earth. No way was he screwing that up because his body had temporarily disconnected itself from the brain. Damn it, it would be so much easier if she'd just stay safely shrouded in those baggy sweatshirts and jeans. Naruto put away all his various cleaning supplies. He plumped up the pillows on his sofa with a vengeance, venting some of the frustration he was feeling. Then, He sat down heavily, sinking into the cushions. Okay. Obviously, this strange attraction was something they both felt. He knew too much about women not to recognize the bemused look in her eyes and the quickening of her pulse. But he knew that was just because she hadn't really been kissed in years. She was fledgling, just stepping back out into the sensual world. The idea torched his desire even more, imagining what he could teach her. Brutally, Naruto brought himself back into focus. 1. He thought, she doesn't have these strange feelings about me, obviously, or she would have invited me to stay. 2. She is new to this sensual stuff. That made her like a baby rattlesnake. Twice as dangerous, because she didn't know about control, and didn't know her own power. 3. He did know how to control himself firmly, was not to touch her, not get close to her, not to do anything that might possibly be misconstrued as anything. Naruto. He heard Hinata's voice echo up his stairwell. Come on up, he said confidently. It was all good. He could handle it. He was back in control. She stepped in, arms full of bags and 2 sketch pads. Naruto, you have no idea what happened. He stared at her. You're right. What happened? It was inspiration. Hinata dropped the sketch pads on his coffee table, opening them up. The drawings he saw were incredible, but it was fashion stuff. As far as he knew, all she'd ever produced were outstanding logos and corporate designs. These sketches had a vitality he'd never seen before in her work, though. Wow. Naruto flipped the pages. These are incredible, Sonny. What exactly happened? Hinata pointed. I don't like bows, or frills, and I absolutely hate pastels, she said enthusiastically. If I keep it minimal with a few shocking ones as a surprise, and comfortable, I can still look good. Naruto laughed at her vehemence. This should be interesting to see. Wait, I can show you. Hinata tore into one of the bags she had lugged up his stairs. He watched with amusement as clothes were suddenly strewn across his extraordinarily immaculate living room. I dug out the old sewing machine I used in design school, for exhibit pieces and things, and made up a couple of samples. He glanced around. There was a surprising amount of clothes spread out there. What time did you finally go to bed? He asked, picking up what he assumed was a skirt. Oh, I haven't been to bed yet. I just took a shower and changed into this before I left, Hinata said brightly. She took off her shirt. Hey, Naruto yelped. But before he could stop her, her jeans were unbuttoned and unzipped. They were halfway down her hips before he got to her. What are you doing? Hinata blinked at him. I wanted to show you this outfit. I can't believe I of all people am saying this about clothes, but it's viciously sexy. You gotta see it. No, he said patiently, trying desperately to stop the blood that had rushed uncomfortably between his legs. Seeing her in a plain white bra and matching were viciously sexy enough, thanks very much. I mean, why don't you change in the bathroom? Hinata laughed. Have you seen how many outfits I brought over? It would take way too long. Hinata kicked off her jeans and grabbed for a small royal blue number. Now, where's the top for this? She was killing him, Naruto thought, a protest strangling in his throat. Oh, this had been such a very, very bad idea. Hinata shimmied into the skirt and top. Now, what do you think of this? She did a sensually slow turn which almost made Naruto drool, as he had his mouth open all this while. She chortled at his expression and oblivious to his real thoughts, said casually, you'll have to imagine the heels, of course, and the cloth is some stuff I was using for color studies for a big exhibit piece I was working on. But it gives the idea. It gave the idea pretty well, Naruto thought. It wasn't too revealing, but it emphasized her legs and gave a good display of her chest. The color made her skin glow as if she was painted by Rembrandt. Very, very nice, he stammered, uncertain of his voice. Wait, I've got a better one in here. Where did I put that? Hinata tore the bags again, and he prayed for strength. She started to drop the skirt again and peel off the top. Okay, why don't we dump all this stuff in the bathroom, Sonny? He said, collecting strewn articles of clothes and averting his eyes. This was more than any red-blooded man could take. Naru, you're holding the dress I wanted to show you. You know, you're not in any frame of mind for a fashion show, he said hurriedly, still not looking at her. Remain calm. We can talk her out of this. I think you're really on the right track with what you've shown me, but you know me. I'm not any real judge of fashion. Naruto, Hinata reminded him, you're the vice president or president. I can't remember. Oh, of a sportswear company. Oh, Naruto mumbled. She would have to point out the obvious. I mean, women's fashions. Don't you have a woman's line, too? On you, I mean, Naruto said, finally turning around. He wished he hadn't. It was more than a quick glimpse of underwear this time. Hinata was standing there, practically tapping her foot with impatience. Her cotton panties were bikinis cut high on her thighs. Her arms were crossed, and one bra strap was hanging down on her shoulder. Precariously. She looked brutally hot. Desire hit him like a tidal wave. You're humoring me, aren't you? Hinata said, eyes narrowed. It took him 2 seconds to form a coherent sentence. No, I'm not. She brightened. Good. Then hand me that deep purple dress you've got in your left hand. Hinata, I really think you ought to go change in the other room. Why? She said. You're just my friend, and there's nothing on me you haven't seen before on someone else. Naruto sat down. She summed it all up. He was just her friend. Obviously, she wasn't having no problem drawing that line. If she was okay with it, then why shouldn't he be? He'd seen plenty of gorgeous babes wearing much less than Hinata had on. But he'd never had these kinds on restraints on himself, either. He sat on his couch, trying not to squirm, or even breathe, as she slipped in and out of design after design. You're driving me crazy, Hinata. The worst part of her performance, though, was her little quick changes, a flash of toned muscle, a curve of being exposed and then covered by a soft hiss of material. He was being drawn on a rack of self-control, and Hinata had absolutely no concept of what she's doing to him. Finally, she got through her last sample and slipped back into her jeans and shirt. He felt as if he was bathed in sweat. His heart was beating and thumping painfully at his ribs, as if he'd run a strenuous 5-kilometer marathon without stopping. So, what did you think? The darling angel asked eagerly. What did he think? He thought she'd shaved 10 years off his life with that sensual torture, that's what. I thought, it was very nice. Nice. She frowned at him, her eyebrows knitted together. I'm looking for devastating here. Come on, Naruto. Fine, he said, sighing deeply. You were incredible. You would make a Buddhist monk pant like a dog. If God had made anything better, he'd have kept it for himself. Now, are you satisfied? Naruto knew he sounded testy, but he couldn't help it. She was just throwing salt on a wound here. Hinata smiled. Pant like a dog, huh? He sighed. You're too much, Sonny. That's what I wanted to hear. She yawned deeply and settled on his couch, next to him. Her eyes were heavy-lidded. Naruto smiled tenderly. Now that she was fully dressed again, with no makeup, he felt a little more charitable towards her. She was really cute when she was sleepy like this. She didn't look dangerous at all. You're my best friend, Naruto. Without you, I couldn't have come this far. I owe all this to you. He said softly as she continued to murmur incoherently, you don't owe anything to me. He watched her drift off into sleep. You did this all by yourself. Hours later, Naruto woke up in a darkened room. Oh man, I fell asleep. Naruto stretched and started to turn over when his hand fell on a soft, curvy body. Illuminated by his glow-in-the-dark clock, Hinata was sprawled on the couch next to him. He yanked his hand away. Naruto smiled. He'd done it. He had spent the whole day with her, doing all of their favorite stuff. Despite the tortuous start, he'd managed to keep his hands off her all day long. It was perfect. From here on, it was going to be clear sailing. She was easily startled, so he gave her shoulders a gentle rub. Wake up, kiddo. Oh, She gasped. His fingers stopped immediately. Did that hurt? Hinata let out a breathy, half-asleep sigh. No. You nut. You shouldn't have been sewing all night. He increased the pressure, smiling at her groans. Oh, she breathed again, sharper this time, bowing her back slightly to press against his fingers. Naruto looked down to see her body starting to writhe a little on the couch. Her long legs stretched, and her back arched like a cat's. It was turning him on. Before he could move, Hinata reached up and looped her arms around his neck. Before he could think, she had tugged his head down to hers. By the time he figured out what was going on, he wanted to neither move or think. It started out gentle, almost tentatively, her lips brushing against his with a whispery caress. He could feel her breathe his name against his lips, and it shot fire from his stomach to his groin. He was struggling with control when she gave him a purring growl and locked more firmly onto his lips. Whatever control he had left disappeared. He slanted over her mouth, pushing her back into the pillows. Hinata sighed and he could feel a shivery tremor rush through her body. He supported his weight on his arms, half covering her body with his own. He could feel her nipples through the thin t-shirt fabric, rubbing against his chest. He let out a growl as his tongue swept past her satiny lips. Naruto heard her inhale sharply before she arched up to rub against him, her tongue dueling with his. Leaning on one arm, he used the other to stroke down the length of her side. His fingers skimmed the column of her neck and she quivered and cried out against his mouth. His kisses grew more insistent as he gently stroked down the side of one smooth, firm. She pressed up against him until he was cupping her fully. He brushed a fingertip over a taut nipple, and she arched up, fitting herself to him with a heated passion that made him gasp. It was intense. It was intoxicating. It was out of control. His heart was beating so strongly, he could hear it pounding in his ears like a war drum, a thrill that warranted him to conquer and dominate. Dedu. Dedu. Dedu Zero. Naruto, are you in there? Naruto was beginning to swore, but his eyes suddenly interlocked with Hinata's round ones. Come on. We know you're home. It sounded like Kiba. Don't make us break in there. The words sent Naruto rolling off Hinata and hurriedly get to his feet. They were both still breathing heavily. Don't move, he told her, and went downstairs. Naruto threw open the door. What? Kiba, Iruka and Gaara were standing at his doorstep. Geez, man, we wanted to let you know the surf's up to 8 feet. It's perfect out, Iruka said, gesturing towards the beach. You coming? You nearly broke my door down to tell me the surf was up. Of course, Kiba said, rolling his eyes. What's wrong with you? Iruka studied him for a second, then grinned. Whoops. I sense bad timing here, if your genes are any indication. Get lost. Naruto growled. Really sorry, man, Kiba said, quickly backing away. Really? Do what you've gotta do. Iruka started laughing, but Gaara looked down at Naruto's driveway and looked back at him, eyes narrowed. You sure everything's okay, bro? Gaara asked quietly. It will be when you clowns get out of here. Naruto closed the door, locked it and ran back upstairs. Hinata was shoving her pell-mell explosion of clothes into the bags she packed them in, and was tucking her sketch pads under her arms. You know, she said hastily, avoiding his eyes. I think I'll take a rain check on the pizza. Hinata, about what happened? I'll take the blame for that one, she said quietly. I guess I was just tired, or dreaming, or something. I need to do some chores. You know, around the house. 1 minute she's burning him alive, and now all she could think about was tackling household chores. Hinata took a deep, quavering breath. I didn't mean for what just happened to happen. You've got to believe that. We've been friends for so long, I hope you'll overlook it as I'm just really out of practice with this physical stuff. She finally looked at him. I know it didn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything. The sentence echoed endlessly in Naruto's mind. I'm going to head out, and we'll just pretend that this never happened. Okay. Naruto nodded. Hinata sent him a lopsided smile. She got up on tiptoe and looked as if she was about to kiss his cheek, then changed her mind. She walked instead to the front door. Naruto trailed behind her, puzzled. "See you," she said as he opened the door for her. "I'll give you a call." Naruto watched her load our car, then drive off. He shut the door, locked it again and went back upstairs. He sat on the couch for a moment. She'd left. He'd been kissing the daylights out of her, and she'd just left. Naruto realized, of course, that he should be happy about what had happened. He'd been telling himself that getting physically involved with Hinata would mean problems, like jeopardizing the friendship. It would be disastrous, it would be Armageddon. And despite telling himself all of that, he'd let himself get into a passionate clinch with her, anyway, right there on his couch. And then, she'd gotten up, told him to forget anything that ever happened, and left. This had never happened to him before. Not that his kisses were irresistible. It was, well, okay, yes, his pride was smarting at that one. But the fact that she could obviously write off what had happened as the overfunctioning of long-dormant hormones. It hurt. Damn it. Naruto got up, went over to the fridge and pulled out a beer. He popped off the lid and took a long draw. She was probably right, he reasoned. Things would be just the way they used to be if they pretended the kisses and caresses hadn't happened, right? He wouldn't have to worry about losing her ever again. In a weird, roundabout way, his date had gone just as planned. Naruto sighed and drowned the rest of his beer. Hina. Oh my gosh. Remember me dragging Deidara on the leash at the Haruno ball? It took Hinata a while to register that the voice was Neji's and grasp on what he's saying. She replied incredulously. What did you do to him? Feeling suspicious of Neji's hidden agenda, what took her by surprise was his willingness to exact revenge on her ex-boyfriend. Hinata would thank Neji later, but right now, she had to make sure Neji didn't murder him and stash his body in her cramped storeroom. Faye. I broke his spirit and chopped him into little pieces. Hinata bolted upright. Neji. I'm just kidding, sweetie. But I bet he won't look at women the same way again. Neji cackled evilly. Hinata's sweat dropped. Thanks, Neji. No worries, cousin. Oh, I'm going shopping with Temari. Wanna come? No thanks. I'm designing my own clothing line. Hinata blushed as she remembered the day at Naruto's house. Stupid. 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 Hinata stared at her phone. She couldn't bring herself to call Temari, telling her that she couldn't come to her housewarming this afternoon. What's worse, she'd hit a dead end on explanations. Hi, Temari. I can't show up because I know Naruto would be there, and I've been avoiding him for a solid week. Why? Because of shut my brain off, I was half asleep and I basically attacked him like Amazon Xena on his own couch, Hinata tried experimentally, then stuffed her head in her pillow. I am so stupid. She hadn't been thinking at all, that night on Naruto's couch. She certainly hadn't gone there to seduce him. An image of the kiss flashed across her mind. Images like that had haunted her all week. It hit her in the middle of conversations at work, or when she was grocery shopping, or when she was trying to draw. Or at night, before she fell into fitful, restless sleep. It was worst at night. Hinata sighed deeply. I wanted more than a friendship with him, Hinata realized numbly. I'm in love with him. Admittedly, she was in denial. Hinata was in love with Naruto, her best friend for a long time now. She had no confidence then, and thought that their friendship would suffice. In fact, there were times when she felt that his friendship was more than she deserved. But now, with her growing self-awareness, it occurred to her that marriage, family, happily ever after were real possibilities. That is, they were possibilities with men in general. But she wanted Naruto in specific, and that was where the problem was. Naruto could date any woman he wanted. Self-admittedly, his life was perfect. No, he wouldn't want to throw that all away. He'll never been in love with me. And that's it. Her conscience sounded indignant. Why should you be the one to simper and sigh, and wait for him to come to his senses? I'm pretty and confident, Damn it. I have options. Hinata felt galvanized. Deidara had to take a complete once-over to look at me. Ha! She grabbed her purse, digging for a slip of paper, and then reached for her phone. Hi, Sasuke. Hinata smiled, looking at an outfit she had just finished in her closet. It's Hinata. I was wondering, do you think you'd like to go to a housewarming party this afternoon? Naruto had been sitting on his sister's couch, trying to get up the energy to socialize. He was in too bleak a mood since the episode with Hinata to be very good company. She'd been avoiding him again, and that was bothering him. They'd talk on the phone a couple of times, but she'd been distant, and he hadn't been able to get her to spill on what was going on. Obviously, something was upsetting her, but she wouldn't share what. She should have been here by now, Naruto thought. He had considered missing Temari's housewarming party, but the lure of finally being able to talk to Hinata face to face had convinced him otherwise. Naruto thought she'd probably felt awful about last Sunday. She had been embarrassed and possibly ashamed at her behavior. She'd even admitted how out of practice she was, as if it was some horrible crime. And all he could do was sit back and take it personally. Well, he'd straighten her out, Naruto thought, brightening. Granted, they couldn't do it again, but there was absolutely nothing wrong with a few kisses between friends. Yeah, right. That's why you've been a hermit since the whole bet started. Shut up, conscience, Naruto warned. I don't need your input right now. He'd cheer her up and they'd go on as usual. Hinata. Temari went running to the front door, throwing it open and enveloped Hinata in a huge hug. I knew you'd look like a goddess. I knew you were in Neji and Konkuro's capable hands. Temari. Hinata interrupted her usual stream of patter firmly. I'd like you to meet my friend, Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke, this is Uzumaki Temari, that is Nara Temari, now that she's married. Congratulations, Sasuke's deep voice emerged from behind her, and Naruto's eyes shot wide open. I've heard so much about you. How's Hawaii? Uchiha Sasuke was here, with Hinata. What was that about? Oh, just beautiful, Temari said, linking her arms through his. I'm sorry to have been gone so long and missed all the fun. Hinata and I haven't been able to talk about you nearly enough for my liking. She glanced over at Hinata, a huge grin on her face. Well, Sasuke said with a matching grin, I should be around for a while, so hopefully you can remedy the situation. Temari laughed, leading the couple to the kitchen. Can I get you a drink? Great, Naruto thought. Apparently, one of them had managed to put last Sunday behind them as if it were nothing, and it wasn't him. He got up and slowly made his way to the door of the kitchen, hovering just outside it, by the foyer. So, this is your new house? He heard Sasuke say. This is home sweet home, his sister replied. Shika dear, why don't you give Sasuke the grand tour? Hinata's already seen the house, and she and I need to catch up on some girl talk. Naruto ducked behind the coat rack, waiting for Sasuke and Shikamaru to disappear down the hallway before resuming his eavesdropping. He knew he shouldn't, but Hinata wasn't going to tell him what was going on, and as her best friend, he really had a right to know. At least, that was the justification he was planning on using if he got caught. Oh, my god, he is so gorgeous, Temari said. Neji's voice chimed in. Didn't I tell you? Yes, but it's hard to see exactly how gorgeous he is until he's standing right next to you. A firebomb, and that smile. You could tan by that smile. Naruto rolled his eyes. If Sasuke had won Temari's gushing vote of approval, the guy was in for some pressure. I love his eyes, Neji cooed dreamily. That chocolate yummy cocoa. Although I love Konkuro's adoring, ravenous. What's your favorite part of him, Hinata? Temari's voice was amused. Or can't you tell us? Before Naruto could get really irate at that comment, Hinata broke in firmly. My favorite part of Sasuke is that he's sweet and doesn't push me into anything. Unlike you two. That's my girl, Naruto thought, mentally cheering her on. You tell him. Oh, come on, honey, Temari said, brushing her remark aside. It wasn't like we put a gun to your head and forced you to take that bet with Naruto, you know. You got into it all on your own. But no matter how you go there, Sasuke's the sweetest, best looking date you've ever landed. If we're just trying to encourage you, what's the problem? Hinata didn't say anything, and Naruto strained to hear her response, hoping to finally figure out what was going on. I don't want to talk about it. I can't talk about it. Naruto gritted his teeth in frustration. Hinata, what's wrong? Neji's voice was concerned. You've gone all white. Naruto started to take a step forward. Sick. Was Hinata? No, it's nothing. I haven't been sleeping well, Hinata said, and the little irritation in her voice comforted him. If there were something wrong with her medically, she'd have said something. Look how her father ended up after keeping his medical illness a secret so as not to worry his family. Hinata's learning a lesson there. So, what was it? And I sort of skipped breakfast. I haven't been that hungry lately. Well, we'll gotta get you some food, first off, Temari said, switching into maternal mode. You know WHT it sounds like. It sounds like you're in love. In love, Hinata. In love with that pretty boy Sasuke. Is Naruto here yet? Hinata asked instead, and Temari laughed. Fine. If you want to change the subject. Neji drawled, if I know Naruto, he's probably camped out in Shikamaru's AV room, watching some sports event. And no, you can't go find him, he said firmly. Honestly, Hina dear, what kind of an impression are you going to make with that idiot brother of mine? Temari added. Naruto sighed. He was having enough problems with Hinata. Trust his sister and Neji to make problems even worse. I wasn't going to watch sports, and Sasuke likes me just fine, Hinata said, absently. I just wondered if Naruto was here. I haven't talked to him in like a week. The room fell silent for a second. Okay, what's wrong? Temari's voice cracked with worry. What do you mean? If you're not watching sports, and you're not talking to Naruto, it's an instant code red, Temari explained. What's going on? Naruto leaned forward intently. You're not eating, you're not sleeping, and wait a minute, Neji said, slowly. You're not pregnant, are you? Naruto knocked over the coat rack. He caught it just before it hit the floor, but crucially in time to hear Hinata's response. What? No, she spluttered. Are you sure? Unless you can get pregnant by a handshake and a casual goodnight kiss, yes, I'm positive. Neji handed Hinata a paper towel to wipe the wet spots on her tea. Naruto began to breathe again. He didn't mean to feel relief that Hinata did not slept with Sasuke, but it was a weight off his chest. Hinata, Shikamaru called. Please come over here for a second. Explain to Sasuke how'd you skillfully construct our wedding present. It was an oil painting. Okay. Hinata dabbed the front of her tea quickly, balled up the paper towel in her fist and hurried to the hallway. Naruto, you can come out from there now. Naruto gulped. He wore a sheepish smile as he came out from his hiding place to meet with the arms akimbo Temari and the surprisingly normal-looking Neji sans makeup. What were you doing eavesdropping on our girl talk? Naruto licked his lips and constructed his sentence carefully. I was worried about Hin. I have an idea, Neji unperturbedly interrupted. Instead of interrogating Naruto, let's discuss the fact that my cousin's sister is hell lot of closer to winning the bet, Neji drawled, with a smug grin on his angular face. Sasuke is the catch of the century, Temari said, her voice similarly smug. Naruto gritted his teeth. I'd say you two need to stop pushing her, he said harshly. Neji and Temari widened their eyes. We're not pushing her, Temari protested. You're pushing her. You've never been happy with her the way she is, and now she's changing to please you. Naruto frowned. He was afraid she'd change for good. I'm glad she had more self-confidence. Who wouldn't be? But she doesn't need you two nudging her into a relationship she's not ready for. Temari looked stricken, but Neji's eyes snapped. She can handle a lot more than you think she can. She's a lot more fragile than you think she is, Naruto countered, his voice more gentle. Trust me, I know. I've hurt her enough. So all I'm saying is, go easy on her, will you? Temari nodded. All right. You know I don't want to hurt Hinata, ever. Of course we don't, Neji finally said, sighing. Well, all right, Naruto, but I don't think it's because of us pushing this time. She seems very involved with Sasuke. Temari and Shikamaru's house was filled with their friends, neighbors and coworkers. Temari was being a wonderful hostess, making sure that everyone feels welcomed. Neji, on the other hand, were surrounded with fans, mostly female, and camera flashes. Later, Kankuro came, which adds another eye candy for the ladies. Everyone who reads the gossip papers know that these two are going out, but isn't it a woman's secret desire to change a hunk's sexual orientation, so that he'll be smitten with her instead? Hanabi came in later, sporting an immaculate appearance as always but with a hint of tiredness in her eyes. Hinata waved cheerfully at her whilst Hanabi bodily grabbed Gaara and pointed at Hinata and Sasuke's direction. Hinata wondered what are those two thinking. Shrugging it off, she resumed conversation with her pal, Sasuke. This has been great, Hinata, Sasuke gave her a brilliant smile. I must say your cousin brother has relieved some of the social pressure I get from the ladies. Hinata grinned. Oh, you don't know the half of it. Sasuke's smile eased and he settled back onto the couch, automatically draping an arm over the couch. You've got really nice group of friends. They're like a family. They make me miss my own actually. Hinata opened her mouth ask, but Sasuke waved it away. He sighed. They can be sort of pushy you know, but they love you, you know. Hinata's eyes widened. You could tell that after just a couple of hours. Sasuke laughed. I was talking about my family, Hinata. They're always pushing me to get married, because they've given up hope for Itachi to ever settle down. That kind of thing. Hinata squeezed his hand gently. I know exactly what you mean. One of these days, I think I'm going to up and elope with somebody, just to get them off my back and get on with my life. Hinata smiled. Hinata, Sasuke said, his eyes turning more serious, have you ever? Excuse me. Hinata turned to see Naruto hovering right next to her. Naruto. Hi. Sasuke, do you mind if I steal Hinata for a minute? I need to talk to her about something sort of private. Hinata's eyes widened for the second time, but Sasuke just nodded. Sure. Go ahead. Hinata frowned at Naruto. I'm sure it's nothing that can't wait. Actually, I have to talk to you right now. With that, Naruto tugged her arm and started to pull her through the throng of people and into the semi-deserted hallway. What are you doing? She demanded. Saving your butt, Naruto said, his head craning around. Temari's got this place filled to the rafters with people, and I need to talk to you in private. Where's? Here we go. Come on. He opened a door and led her down the cellar stairs. Hinata sighed, frustrated. This had better be good. She glanced around the darkened room. The air was damp and cool, smelling faintly of lemony detergent. Did you hear the line the guy was running on you? Naruto said, pulling the hanging cord of the light bulb, turning the light on. You're lucky I pulled you away when I did. She blinked in disbelief. Excuse me, you heard me. That guy was going to make his move. Naruto grinned in smug satisfaction. Little did he know, huh? You wouldn't buy a bunch of sugar-coated lies with marriage and stuff. What makes you think he'd be lying? Hinata said, anger making her voice sharp. If he had been making a move, so what? It's about time somebody else did. Are you kidding me? His own voice tinged with anger. Oh, that's rich. Here I am protecting you from a complete leech, and all you can do is give me static about it. Protecting me? Hinata rolled her eyes. Please. How many times do I have to tell you, I can take care of myself? I am a full-grown, full-fledged woman who is perfectly able of handling a man who has more on his mind than some casual kissing. Really? Naruto's voice was sarcastic. Funny, I seem to remember a certain, full-fledged, woman getting distinctly flustered when she found herself just kissing a guy on his couch. I seem to remember her exact words were that she had been really out of practice with this physical stuff. His blue eyes were hot as gunmetal. Or did I just imagine that? Hinata clenched her fists. I am out of practice. Sasuke could be a perfect way to help me get back into the game. Like hell, Naruto growled. Hinata, no matter what you think, you don't know what you're getting into. You're way over your head. You don't even know this guy. I do, too, know Sasuke. After what? 2 weeks. Naruto took a step closer to her, his eyes blazing. So tell me, what's Sasuke's favorite sport? His favorite movie? His favorite flavor of ice cream? Hinata stepped toe to toe with him. He's not a sports fanatic like you, but he'll catch the occasional baseball game. His favorite movie is Spartacus and favorite flavor of ice cream is the same as yours. Mint chocolate chip. Naruto narrowed his eyes. I don't suppose you could tell me how HW is in bed. Hinata gaped, her heart jolting painfully. How dare you? Of course, you can't compare us there. Naruto smiled coldly. Maybe I can give you a hint though on what I prefer. So you'll know if Sasuke likes what I do. Before she could move, he laced his hand in her hair and dragged her mouth up to his. The kiss wasn't like the warm, simmering, sensual kiss they'd shared on his couch. This kiss was like a volcano, hot, pulsating and explosive. Hinata felt his fingers contract at the base of her neck, while his other arm snaked out to wrap around her waist, pressing her intimately to him. This was wrong. This was out of anger, out of passion, out of control. And yet, it felt so right. With superhuman effort, she pushed herself from him, tearing her mouth from his. Panting for breath, she glared at him. Don't you dare. His eyes widened. He was also short of breath, Hinata noticed. She saw more steam to fire in his eyes, he was getting himself back under control. Hinata's voice vibrated with the energy rushing through her veins. Don't you ever, just ever grab me and think you can punish me with that kind of thing, just because you got some macho, testosterone-driven issues. You aren't Tarzan, and I sure as hell am not Jane. She clenched her fist, passions blurring with fury. When I kiss someone, it's not going to be out of anger, or frustration, or whatever. It's going to be because of desire, pure and simple. When a man kisses me, it's because he wants to kiss me. You got that? He drew a ragged breath, his eyes full of remorse. I got it. Good. Without another word, she threw her arms around his neck, lacing her fingers in his hair and dragged his lips down to meet hers. If Hinata thought she could stay in control of the kiss, she was wrong. Vaguely she thought she was trying to prove a point, but now all she could hang on to was the fact that she needed his lips. Him. Naruto stood stiff as marble, probably with shock, before he wrapped his arms around her, his hands clutching at the small of her back. He melted into her, slanting over his mouth hungrily. Hinata parted her lips, wanting more. His tongue traced her lips with fire. She moaned as his tongue swept into her mouth to tangle with hers. Heat speared through her, pulsing like beacons, drawing a median line from her heart to between her legs. She couldn't think. She could only desire, and act. Naruto pushed her onto the laundry table, lifting her up to sit on it. She clutched on his shoulders and her legs parted easily. He stood between them, his hands stroked down her back, in long loving glides. She could feel his fingertips, like trails of flame that only pitched her passion higher. Hinata. He breathed unevenly against her neck, pressing kisses just behind her ear. Neck. Collarbone. Arching her back, her pressed against him. Her legs wrapped around his waist. Pushing himself forward, he elicited an inexplicable gasp from her. Naruto. Hinata. You down here. Hinata gasped, not in pleasure this time, and thought she'd swallow her own tongue. Or possibly Naruto's. The two of them tore themselves away from one another, both standing like panting boxers in opposite corners of the small room. Temari peered down curiously. What are you two doing down here? We'll be up in a minute. Naruto's voice was rough, and his back was to the stairwell. Well, when you do, could you bring up a case of root beer? The guests are getting so thirsty. She shut the door behind her. Hinata, this is crazy. You're my best friend in the whole world, he said, moving in to drop a quick kiss on her already swollen lips. Please, for both our sakes, stay the hell away from me. With that, Naruto bolted up the stairs in 3 seconds flat. Fanning her face, Hinata leaned back against the now infamous laundry room table. What had just happened was unbelievable. He wants you. It wasn't a matter of not being his type. It wasn't a matter of him seeing her only as a friend. He thought that she wasn't interested in him. He thought that she thought him only of a buddy. I might have a shot at this, Hinata thought suddenly. Now, the time for analyzing is over. I'm in love with him and I'm going to make this work. If Hinata recalled correctly, there was a chapter in the guide on how to seduce a man. She smiled wickedly. Now, it was a chance to try it out. A few days later, Naruto felt that he had perhaps overreacted at the housewarming. He sat at his desk in the office. It was dark out, but he'd been getting a lot done. Yes, given a week's distance and perspective, he felt quite sure that he'd blown the whole thing out of proportion. Boss. Naruto looked up from the proposal he was working on. Yes, Sai. Naruto's young assistant shifted his weight nervously. It's about these. He held up several sheets of paper. Naruto frowned. What about them? These letters don't make sense, boss. Sai put them down on the desk in front of Naruto's briefcase. I mean, in one paragraph, you're talking about the risks of potentially dangerous mergers. Then you're saying we should throw caution to the wind and sign up tomorrow. What exactly do you want to say here? Naruto stared at the letters as if they were live alligators. I wrote that. The really strange thing is, I didn't even think we were trying to merge with this company. I thought we just wanted to run a couple of co-op ads with them. Sai cleared his throat. I usually just proof your letters and send them as is, but this is really weird. Thanks, Sai. Naruto sighed, taking the letters and throwing them on top of one of the piles on his desk. I don't know where my head is. I'll fix them. What time is it, anyway? He glanced at his watch with tired eyes. 8 o'clock. What are you still doing here? Sai shrugged. If you're working, I'm working. Naruto laughed. While I appreciate the dedication, are you nuts? Just because your boss is becoming a workaholic, doesn't mean you have to be chained to your desk. I thought you might be working on something important, Sai argued. You've been here until 9 o'clock every night, and you're coming in at 7 in the morning. I'm just playing a little catch-up. It won't be like this for much longer, Naruto said, unconvincingly, but in a blink, gave Sai a stern look. And I expect you to work normal hours unless I expressly ask otherwise, got it? Sai grinned. Thanks, boss. With no further prompting, he bolted out from the office. Naruto sighed, shutting down his computer. He might as well admit it. He'd done everything he could think of to exorcise the ghost Hinata. He ran on the beach, worked out in his home gym until his muscles screamed, did paperwork until his eyes crossed, etc. Anything to get his mind off her. But that didn't protect him from his subconscious mind. The minute his head hit the pillow, he was asleep with her taste on his lips, the sweet scent of hair in his nose and the silky feel of flesh under his palms. He'd relived that moment in the laundry room every night, and had gone considerably further with it than they had in reality, as if they'd never been interrupted. What was worse, when he wasn't fighting this overwhelming lust for her, he got blindsided by an even sneakier emotion. He missed her. He'd tried not to call her, but something would happen and his fingers would instinctively start to dial her number. He had consciously avoided poker night and all the usual gang hangouts, afraid that she might be there. So far, he'd shuttled to work or home, stopping only for long surf sessions because he knew that was one place she wouldn't be. Naruto knew he had inadvertently started this change, by proposing the stupid, short-sighted, damnable bet. Now that the change had started, he didn't know what was going to happen to her, or to them. And he didn't know how to stop it, but at the same time, he knew he didn't want to live without her. He had done everything but talk face to face with her. Maybe if he just sat down with her and discussed it, she would understand and come up with some way to help him fix things and make it all right again. He'd tried being around her and it had turned into the episode in the laundry room. Now, having tried not being around her, he still found her just as distracting in his mind as she was in flesh. Okay, almost as distracting, Naruto thought, a quick flash of her flesh burning his memory. They had to talk it out. It was the mature, adult, rational thing to do. Taking a deep breath, he picked up the phone and dialed her number. Hello, Hinata, Naruto said, clearing his throat. It's me, Naruto. There was a moment's pause on the other end of the line. I thought you weren't talking to me, she said finally. It's not working, Hinata. I need to see you. Another pause. Okay. When and where? Her voice returned, coming through as husky and seductively so. Naruto pushed back a thought and glanced at his watch. I'm still at the office, but I'll be heading home soon. Maybe I could drop by after that. I've got a better idea, Hinata murmured. Why don't I meet you at your house? Say, in half an hour. Naruto sighed. Half an hour. He could pull himself together in half an hour. Okay. I'll see you at 8:30. I'm glad you called, Naruto. He could hear the little smile in her voice. I missed you. She hung up and he gently placed the phone back on its cradle. I missed you, too, he said, half to himself. Naruto had gotten home and changed into more comfortable clothes and was waiting for Hinata to get there. He wouldn't let her talk first, and he wouldn't get physically close to her. He'd lay out the problem as if presenting a brainstorming session, and see what she had to say. If he just kept his hands off her, if he could just stay focused, they might get out of this alive. Naruto smiled mockingly at himself. Okay. He was exaggerating. But not by much. This thing had driven him crazy, and he was dangerously close to the breaking point. He was torturing himself with images of her, at the sports bar, at the housewarming, on his couch. If Hinata wore one of her simple yet sexy design tonight, he wasn't sure what he'd do, throw a beach towel over her, or just flat out tackle her and rake her on the living room floor. He glanced at his hallway cupboard. Maybe he should get out a beach towel, just in case. Either way, he was close to snapping. The doorbell rang and he started slightly. Get a grip, man, he muttered to himself, and praying for strength, he opened the door. Hinata was wearing her hair pulled back, and her makeup made her eyes look smoldering, her lips inviting. Naruto quickly moved his gaze elsewhere. Thankfully, she was wearing a thick gray wool car coat, apparently over one of her shorter dresses, since he couldn't see the hemline. She was wearing a set of low pumps. He quickly glanced away from her legs, knowing that staring too long at them would definitely push him toward the taking her on the living room floor scenario. Come on in, Naruto said nervously. Can I get you anything? A glass of water, Hinata said. Strangely, she sounded equally nervous. Probably in reaction to him. He'd been a complete basket case lately. It wouldn't be a surprise if she were uncomfortable with it. And there was their previous and new physical history. Yes, the sooner they got this cleared up, the better. Do you want me to take your coat? Naruto asked. Hinata looked at him with wide eyes, as if he'd suggested they go murder somebody. Never mind. Actually, that's better. Keep the coat on, he said, words tumbling out one another. I have a few things I need to say to you, and I need you to just listen and not interrupt me. Hinata nodded slowly, nibbling delicately at her lower lip. Naruto tried not to let the sweet little gesture distract him. Hinata, he started, then stopped. What I mean to say is, he took a deep breath. We've kissed, Hinata, a lot. She stared at him for a moment, then burst out laughing. I know that. I was there, remember? Her laughter helped ease the tension. After a moment, he chuckled good-naturedly, too. I keep forgetting who I'm talking to, Hinata. We really need to talk about this. She smiled, tilting her head to the side. Okay. What exactly do you need to say? His brain went black for a moment. I guess I forgot it was you when I was kissing you. She flinched. That didn't come out right, Naruto added hastily. Let me try that again. I knew it was you, but I sort of forgot everything that you entailed. And what exactly does kissing me entail? Naruto sighed raggedly. What I'm about to say here is, ever since you changed what you looked like, I haven't treated you like a friend, and that's where the problem began. I just keep getting sidetracked by what you look like, and ignored the fact that you're Hinata. And since you're Hinata, well, you know what that means. I'm not sure. Why don't you spell it out for me? Naruto swallowed. It means that I shouldn't do anything like that with you. You're special, Hinata, he explained. You're very special to me just the way you are. She sighed. Without another word, she got up and went to his bedroom. Naruto blinked. Well, that had gone worse than he had expected. He followed her. Are you okay? He asked, then stopped abruptly. She had tossed the car coat onto the floor and was rummaging through his chest of drawers. What she was wearing. He stopped breathing. Oh, mercy. She was wearing a deep, dark blue teddy, in some shiny material that made it shimmer like a black blue pearl. What little there was, cut high on her thigh and low down the front. It had a dark satin ribbon lacing it up on the front, just begging to be untied. She turned to stare at him, her eyes huge and glowing like hazel crystals. Do you have any sweats? She asked. Naruto cleared his throat. I'm sorry. What? Sweats? She repeated, blushing. The pink wash covered most of her body, it seemed, and he could tell, most of her body was deliciously exposed. I was wondering if I could borrow a pair of sweats and a t-shirt. Naruto's mouth went dry. He tried to look everywhere, all at once, and his pulse beat a hectic tempo in his chest. Hinata looked down at the drawer she'd opened. Look, I feel really stupid about this. I should have known. Oh, I've just been an idiot. Sure, I've changed a lot, but we've always just been friends. I guess I was starting to buy the hype, you know. Hinata the tomboy turning into Hinata the sexy. It's like we always say, you know you're in trouble when you start believing your own press. Naruto barely registered the self-derision in her voice, the embarrassment. A part of him wanted to comfort her, but the rest of him had already started the chemical change that made listening to even rational thoughts impossible. The beast was awake and it wanted Hinata. Naruto had finally reached his breaking point. He snapped. I just want to throw on some normal clothes and watch ESPN until I forget this whole episode, hey. Her words got cut off as in 2 quick steps, he was at her side, spinning her, grabbing her. Taking her. With an impatient motion, he pulled the ribbon out of her hair, crushing the satiny waves in one hand. His eyes burned into hers. Before she could saw anything else, he molded his mouth to hers, branding her. She tasted like some tropical fruit, sweet and tart and exotic. He feasted on her. When he felt her body melt into pliancy, he gripped her to him, gently tugging at her hair until her closed eyes opened. I tried, damn it, he said, his voice ragged. I tried not to do this. Hinata took a deep breath. Do you know who I am this time? Naruto nodded. You're the woman I told myself I couldn't want, but the woman I need more than breathing. You're the woman I crave like a drug. He smiled, his eyes gleaming with ferocious promise. You're the woman I'm going to make lose control tonight. Satisfied. She started to nod. Well, not yet, she said, and her voice sent sensual shivers from his heart, to his stomach, and lower. But I think I will be. Hinata. Naruto groaned, and took her mouth again. This is what I wanted. It's perfect. Hinata thought, and returned the kiss with equal fierceness, tangling her fingers in his golden hair. It was only a few steps to the bed, and she laughed as they stumbled over a pair of his running shoes and fell onto the bed. Naruto laughed, too, a short, harsh gasp. Okay. I'm going faster than I should, he said, studying Hinata intently. I've wanted you for too long to lose control now. Be careful, Hinata teased, moving her body seductively and grinning smugly when his eyes widened. You're not the only person who can make somebody lose control. She kissed him gently on his jawline, then lay back on the bed and smiled. He raised an eyebrow at her challenge. Then, he ran his fingers through her hair, his fingertips caressing her face like a blind man, learning with his touch the way he'd only known her with his eyes. You are exquisite, Naruto said clearly, his voice low and rough. Don't ever doubt it. He brushed kisses over the trail his fingers had drawn. He made her feel beautiful. Her fingers went to his shirt. Trembling, she drew the material more slowly than she wanted, but her movement on his now sensitized skin was having an effect on him. Finally, she tugged the thing off his shoulders and tossed it blindly onto the floor. Hinata took a minute to look her fill at his broad, muscular chest. Then, she skimmed her fingertips over it, taking her cue from him, moving with gentle roughness. The satin smoothness of his skin contrasted wildly with the corded muscles that flexed under her hands. Naruto smiled that sexy, devilish smile that sent a spear of fire through her chest. My turn, he murmured against the base of her throat. She gasped at the sensation, feeling ripples of it pulse through her chest. He took the ends of the ribbon that laced up her teddy and slowly tugged. The bow vanished. Then, he eased the shoulder straps down off her shoulders. This is nice, he said appreciatively, grinning. I think you should greet me at the door in this more often. Well, you know how it is, she wriggled breathlessly. Laundry day's tomorrow, and it's all I had left. Naruto laughed, tracing the low edge of the now open bodice with his tongue. Remind me to bring a load of laundry over, he said, his breath tickling her skin. I think I'd like to know you're not wearing anything when I get there. Hinata was going to chuckle, but he edged the material lower and she didn't have any more breath to laugh with. He cupped the undersides of her and showered it with kisses. He watched as her nipples pinched forward, hardening, tightening under his attention. She was breathing in sexy little gasps, a combination of surprise and arousal. He smiled tenderly as she edged up to meet his mouth. The glint of challenge in her eyes only encouraged him to take it even more slowly, to torture her the way she was torturing him. He'd take all night and part of the morning if he had to. Naruto slipped the teddy off her, and revised that thought. He'd last maybe 5 minutes at this rate. Her body was perfection. Hinata twisted a little, obviously unused to being to the light of a man's eyes. The little action made him smile. Naruto stroked her legs lovingly, promising himself that he'll give more attention to them later, when he wasn't under the driving, brutal passion that was grilling him as he caressed her. She grasped one of his hands. No fair, she said breathlessly. It's your turn. She reached for his waistband. Naruto gave her a surprised look. For someone so shy, she took the lead with a look of hunger that tripled what he was already feeling. If this kept up, he might die. But he would certainly die happy. Naruto was wearing silk boxers with silver stripes. Hinata could see the evidence of arousal springing forward against the slick fabric. Aren't those the boxers I bought for you on your birthday? He started to nod, then hissed sharply as she smoothed her hands over them, giving loving attention to his hardness. They didn't feel this good in the box. He choked. Hinata laughed, teasing him the way he'd teased her, pressing kisses on his thigh, at his waistband. Before she could dip lower, Naruto growled, pinning her on the bed. You keep that up, Angel, and I'll be embarrassed. I want tonight to be good for you. Naruto, she whispered, pausing to kiss him deeply. I'm finally with you. It's already perfect. He smiled, like a man who'd been given the gift he'd always dreamed of, and she shivered as he took her mouth in a kiss sweeter than any she'd ever experienced. When he leaned down to kiss her neck, she moaned, wrapping her arms around him, stroking strong eager fingers down his back. He nipped at her, making her back arch even more. Naru, Hinata clutched at him. Please. I need. Naruto groaned. Angel, I need you, too. He tugged off his boxers. He was magnificent. His skin was gleaming and chiseled and his arousal was so. Hinata cleared her throat nervously. He's huge. Something must have reflected on her face, because despite the passion that was clearly burning through him, Naruto chuckled. Second thoughts, Angel. Eep. He laughed, nuzzling her neck. When she felt his hardness pressing at the soft flesh of her thighs, a wave of molten dampness answered between her legs. She arched her hips, cuddling him intimately. Naruto stopped, poised at the brink of her. His breathing was labored. Hinata. She looked up. His eyes were rings of blazing silver around circles of opaque black fire. Hinata was drenched in passion and it took her a minute to figure out why he'd stopped then. He was giving her one last chance to stop what they'd started. He was letting her decide. The fever inside her was beyond reasoning. She arched up against him, kissing him hard as she moved her legs to curve around him. With a groan, Naruto pushed forward, and she felt him fill her with delicious slowness. She clutched his shoulders tightly as she felt him breach the sensitive barrier. She mewed loudly and gasped when his thrust began to move forward. Naruto. Oh, God, Angel, he breathed. Naruto moved inside her, rocking gently, thrusting swiftly and deeply. She could feel the pressure of him, moving over her most delicate flesh, and felt fire roar through her. She pushed her hips up to meet him, wrapping her legs tightly around his waist. Naruto, she breathed. I can't, her pulse pounded in her ears and she was shouting his name. He moved against her, and she could feel the slick sweat between them. He was bringing her to the edge, and she could feel that elusive pulse start to ring through her. She pushed against him, and he drove into her, hard. Hinata was catapulted over into oblivion, every sense overloading. She cried out, clenching him tight. Naruto. Hinata. He groaned in answer, his hips jerked hard against hers. Once, twice before finally collapsing on top of her. After a long moment, he pushed himself up on one arm, stroking her wheat-dampened bangs out of her face. He smiled rakishly. I won, he said. Hinata blinked, then remembered the challenge earlier. She chuckled. Her head was still reeling from what they've just done. And amazingly, as his fingers stroked down between her shoulder blades, she felt an aftershock of pleasure. She squirmed and his eyes widened as she rubbed against him. I think you're cheating, she said, moving seductively, her breathing going shallow. His breathing went uneven, but he smiled. What are you suggesting? Hinata kissed him luxuriously then released him abruptly. Tiebreaker. I like the idea. 2 out of 3, Naruto said, moving up with one lusciously rough motion. She gasped.